Good morning. Happy Monday morning. If there can't be a happy Monday morning, welcome to a new week. My name is Ryan Welton, the founder and curator of Oklahoma Memo. It is a daily local news recap. It's a newsletter. It's a free newsletter. There aren't a lot of alerts that hit your phone. This is an email. Hits your inbox at 7 a.m. Monday through Saturday. Used to be Monday through Friday, but I sent my first longer form reader, if you will, sort of a recap of the week on Saturday. It's a newsletter, Oklahoma Memo, and we're here to talk about Oklahoma news. This is something that I did over the weekend that I wanted to do it again today. What you see behind me is the cacophony that is my office. This is what a journalist's office should look like, kind of a mess, askew, just lots of stuff going on here. Of course, a big weekend for, who am I pointing to? Big weekend for the Sooners back there. The Oklahoma Sooners beat Alabama 23-21. The college football playoff poll will come out, I believe, Tuesday night. And it's likely that Oklahoma will leap up to 8 or 7, I believe. If you look at most of the bracketology predictions, Oklahoma would be playing Notre Dame right now, either in the 8-9 slot or the 7-10, with a real chance that the Sooners get a home bid. Now, they have to still beat Missouri. They have to beat LSU. Could be trap games. But, hey, we're not here to talk about sports. We're here to talk about the news of the day. Let's catch up on weather real quick. I always joke with my wife that today feels like a great day for a run. I don't run as much as I used to. I walk. When you get older, you protect your back like that. But today really feels like that. There's a little mist in the air. It's a little bit gray. But we're expected to reach some record highs this week. The high today is expected to get up to 81, and then you have 74, 74 with the chance of rain coming through on Thursday as temperatures dip back down into the 60s, and then by early next week, the upper 50s and lower 60s. And my hunch is that we're probably done with the 70s and 80s for the season. Although it's nice to have every once in a while in late fall and what will ultimately be winter here in Oklahoma. So what I like to do is, if there's no breaking news, I just take you into today's memo. And that means I'm going to share my screen. So I want to show you what the Oklahoma memo looks like. Let's just go there right now. You're able to see my screen. It says stop sharing. So I presume it works. Put a comment below if you're actually able to see the Oklahoma memo website. And you'll notice here that there is a story that's right in the middle. This story right here that says Oklahoma halts adoption of social studies textbooks amid standards freeze. That is today's memo. The rest of these stories out here aren't one-off stories, really. They are the newsletters from days before, and you'll see that each one of them has a date. There's not one on Sunday, so the one before is from Saturday, the recap newsletter, November 15th. And then before that, November 14th, November 13th, November 12th. And then as you come down the site, just giving you a tour here, you have my latest YouTube videos. This live video will be available on demand and will be here on the Oklahoma Memo website under YouTube. This will show the previous 3 or the most recent 3 videos that I've done. Podcast, I try to turn everything that I do in video into audio. And then featured. And basically that is just whatever the algorithm, whatever Beehive decides it wants to put down here. And then there's an archive, and you can search on tags, topics. If you wanted to search on Ryan Walters, I'm sure it would pull up a whole bunch of stuff. Let's just see. It's thinking. Look at that. You can just see how often Ryan Walters has been mentioned in Oklahoma Memo. One thing that I should be super clear about as I open up today's edition is that the vast majority of the content that's in here is not primary source journalism. It's not me doing the reporter's work. There is some but primary source journalism in conversations that I have with civic leaders, business leaders, elected officials, whatnot. But most of this is my attempt to amplify the fantastic newsrooms across Oklahoma. So let's just take a look here. This one today is in partnership with Masters in Marketing. That is an advertiser that comes to me through the Beehive platform. You probably have heard of Substack. Well, Beehive is a competitor. Beehive is just an alternative to Substack. You'll see the tags up top. Today's newsletter is largely about Oklahoma energy, money, and education. And that top story, oftentimes I'll try to change up the headline of whoever gave me. I say gave me. You have to understand. So the top story today is from Nuria Martinez Keel of the Oklahoma Voice, the best education reporter in Oklahoma. And most of these publications, Oklahoma Voice, Oklahoma Watch, KOSU, KGOU, Tulsa Flyer, Public Radio Tulsa, Read Frontier, The Frontier, they all have republication policies that allow me to republish the entire story. But that's not my goal. My goal is to get you into a habit of visiting Oklahoma Voice, into visiting KOSU.org, into visiting KGOU.org. But what I do is that I go through all of these sites and try to pick out the stories that will be most important to you. Education is always top of mind because many of the folks who subscribe to Oklahoma Memo, and by the way, you can subscribe at oklahomamemo.com/subscribe, but most of you are parents. And when you're a parent, education is important. So I've got my little monologue here up top. I won't go over that too much, but let's just get to the top story. Oklahoma, and this is a Friday story. Oklahoma won't adopt social studies textbooks with academic standards on hold. And the reason why there would be a Friday story in a Monday edition is because I presume you probably had bigger things going on this weekend. You had soccer games. You had to go to the store. You watched the OU game. You watched the OSU game. Maybe you watched NFL football, went to the gym, went to church, had church activities, had family activities. You didn't have time to catch up on the week's worth of news. So I wanted to make sure that you saw this story from Oklahoma Voice. And essentially what this story indicates is that the state is not going to adopt these new social studies textbooks. You remember the ones that would actually refer to 2020 as an iffy election? Those social studies textbooks are not going to be allowed with academic standards for the subject still in flux. There is a state textbook committee that met last week to suspend indefinitely the Ryan Walters option for social studies textbook adoption, while the Supreme Court and the Oklahoma State Department of Education consider what to do with academic standards. So if you're just the broader view, if you don't live in Oklahoma and you don't understand what's been going on, well, Oklahoma had a state superintendent. I'll stop sharing. Oklahoma had a state superintendent, a guy named Ryan Walters. And Ryan Walters served for a couple of years. He had been a teacher at McAllister High School and then was nominated to become the education secretary by Governor Stitt. The reason why we had or have an education secretary and a state superintendent of education is because the person who was state superintendent before Ryan Walters was a Democrat. And Governor Stitt, I think, wanted to have a counter to that. And so he created this entity called Education Secretary, and Ryan Walters became the first education secretary. But that propelled him into the public spotlight so that he ran for state superintendent and won, and then essentially went on a rampage against public schools, public teachers. There's been a lot of discussion about what the MAGA playbook is for public education. And there are a lot of thinkers out there who say that their goal is to diminish and demolish public education and public institutions. And Walters certainly did his best. Walters left the state superintendent's office to become the CEO of something called the Teacher Freedom Alliance, which is an anti-teachers union. It's a union that's against unions. So there you have it. And what this textbook committee is doing, to give you the context for the full story, is they are undoing what Ryan Walters did. That is a lot of what Lyndall Fields, the new state superintendent, who's temporary, he's interim, he's not running for office. There are a lot of qualified people running for office. He's not one of them. He is a transition state superintendent. And what you're finding is that between him, between the state school board, and between this textbook committee, they're undoing a lot of what Ryan Walters had done while he was here. Let's go back to sharing my screen because I want to the rest of the newsletter. And today we have some national quick links. I always put national links in between the top story and then the second story. And I basically, what I try to do is that I try to go to all the major national news outlets, even those that are super liberal, MSNBC, and conservative, Fox News, and try to pick out something that I think would interest you in each one of those. The goal of this newsletter is to make you as informed as possible, as fast as possible, because I know you don't have time to be visiting all of these sites and consuming this info. So essentially, I'm your DJ. I'm your news DJ. You may have heard it Sunday night, but President Trump has now reversed himself on the Epstein files. He's encouraging House Republicans to vote for their release. Not sure what's up there because I don't think it could possibly be good for him or exonerating. Also, we get word that the FAA is lifting its emergency flight reductions on Monday. A friend of mine, Sean Cummings, he had a Facebook post over the weekend. He was at Will Rogers World Airport in Oklahoma City. He noted how dead it was there, how just empty it was. And there are a lot of people opting for cars instead of planes or not traveling at all because of delays and canceled flights and just concern over not having enough air traffic controllers. So will this improve things? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be overnight. In fact, the conversation I had with national podcaster Grant Herms, we talk every Friday morning, and that's part of the Saturday morning newsletter. He's got a podcast called Make It Make Sense. We talked about how the government shutdown can't be undone just like that. It takes time. Third story on this list, it's a sad story. I don't know what the circumstance is, and I don't know what condition he's in, but Chris Boyd, a player for the New York Jets, a defensive back, was critically wounded in New York City and in Midtown. And folks, I go to New York, not often, but it's been about once every other year for the past several years. And Midtown Manhattan is safe. It's as safe as anywhere. And you know that he's critically, now it happened after 2 in the morning, and there's something to be said about anything that happens after midnight. But he's critically wounded, fighting for his life, and just we wish for the best for him. That's from the New York Post. And then this story that I found fascinating: billionaire Mackenzie Scott. She is the ex-wife, I believe, of Jeffrey Bezos. They had just a monumental divorce, and she got monumentally rich out of the deal, making historic donations to historically Black colleges and universities, which I think is awesome. And that story is from ABC News. I don't know if that makes me woke or not, but I just think that's an awesome thing to do. I think it's an awesome thing to give. I think billionaires should be giving. And then every edition in this National League section, I have a link to our daily lottery results. All right, this next story down here, I don't want to bore you too much. I'll get through this pretty quickly, but this is a story from KGOU, State Impact Oklahoma, about utility regulators denying OG&E's request to hike consumer rates to fund construction. This one is going to annoy you just a little bit. Let me turn off the sharing for a second. So OG&E, they have to go before the State Corporation Commission to get permission to raise your rates, to charge you money. And I don't know how many of you actually look at your bill in detail. I don't. Who's got time for that? I don't have time for that. But it's good to know when they're going before the board to ask for these sort of hikes. And there are a lot of publications in Oklahoma that do a great job of informing you about these meetings. NonDoc. If you're not going to NonDoc regularly, go to nondoc.com. Fantastic news source. OK Energy Today. Jerry Bonin, a veteran Hall of Fame Oklahoma journalist. Literally, he's in the Oklahoma Journalism Hall of Fame. But they'll have content about this. And then this story that I got from State Impact Oklahoma. And what OG&E is trying to do in this case is they do construction, and they don't want to absorb the cost themselves. They're passing it along to you. Let me just read just a dab from this story from KGOU, State Impact Oklahoma. Chloe Bennett Steele, fantastic journalist. The utility company was granted a pre-approval to construct natural gas combustion turbines, but customers won't be billed for them right away. After a series of meetings spanning multiple weeks, Oklahoma Corporation commissioners voted Thursday to deny their request to use a cost recovery measure called construction work in progress. We should look at our bills together and see if there is ever in the future construction work in progress, or maybe we should just break down what an OG&E bill looks like. But OG&E, they had sought to use this procedure to help finance the construction of 2 natural gas turbines. Understand, OG&E is a public utility, but They are in the money making business. And we don't even know what winter's going to be like this year. Do you remember 2021 and what happened in February and how that impacted our rates? And what happens every year in April, May, and June here in Oklahoma? The thing about insurance, the thing about utilities is that something that impacts one entity in Oklahoma really impacts us all when it comes to these bills. It's an important part of what journalism does. They are watchdogs over things like this that actually do impact you. The news doesn't affect me. Oh, yes, it does. If your news isn't covering, though, things like this, you need to find another source. And again, while Oklahoma Memo isn't, a primary source of information for this, I am amplifying. I'm going out and finding these primary sources of information and amplifying them for you. Let's go back to the newsletter real quick. I'll share my screen. Let's go here. And then I have this section. Oftentimes after the second story, I'll have a story in here that is a conversation. I'm finishing up a conversation with a gentleman named Tim Lee for the Center for Freedom, the Center for Individual Freedom, CFIF. And they had a report recently about how Oklahomans feel about the jab. And I say that kiddingly, how they feel about mandated vaccines. And it turns out that Oklahomans are overwhelmingly in favor of mandated vaccines. And for an organization like the Center for Individual Freedom to promote the fact that Oklahomans want these mandated vaccines, that says a lot. But the truth of the matter is that Tim explains that really they conduct research and they inform their constituents about what the research shows about what Oklahomans feel. However, those chips may fall. If Oklahomans had said, we don't want vaccines to be mandated, we want them to be undone like Florida has done, that would have been the result of the survey. And it's not just a survey. It is a scientific poll. We explain how it was done. We explain the findings. He was great to talk to, and I hope that we get to have more conversations. That will, if everything goes okay today, that will be in tomorrow's Oklahoma Memo. But then I have this section called the Oklahoma Rundown. Now, if you have time to visit 20 sites a day, God bless you. Do your thing. But that's what I do, and I don't just pick what's out there. This isn't Google. I am cherry picking the stories that I think you'll be most interested in. It's sort of like a concierge, a news concierge. And I put a little asterisk next to the ones that have a paywall. Yes, I pay for the Oklahoman. Yes, I pay for Tulsa World. I think they're both worth it. Although, I wish they were a little bit less, but is what it is. I look at all the TV news sites, both in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and in Lawton and in the Ada market. And I rank these stories myself. I used to use AI to help me rank these stories, but I've had enough compelling arguments made to say that I should not abrogate that responsibility. I should be doing that myself. And so, I love to hear from folks. news@oklahomamemo.com. If you disagree with the order that I put these in, let me know. I tend to have sports at the bottom. You'll see where does OU stand in the AP Top 25 after the win over Alabama. Also, did you know? Look, I went to some OKC Energy games when the Energy were playing. Let me come back here to this. And I'd gone to some Energy. I love soccer, and I'd gone to some Oklahoma City Energy games while they were doing their thing, and they'll be back soon. I don't know if they'll be cold exactly, but did you know that FC Tulsa? So there's MLS, right? MLS is the professional league here in the United States. Many of us watch the English Premier League. That's not that, and this is not MLS, but there's one down from that. Probably the equivalent of championship in Great Britain. It's called USL. FC Tulsa is playing for the USL title next weekend. That's pretty incredible. After winning this weekend. And that story is included in the Oklahoma Memo. Let's go back and look at some of these others. At the bottom, sports again. Oklahoma State Wrestling shows resilience to take third at National Duels Invitational. My buddy Jeremy and I, we have a podcast called Bedlam Buds. We talk wrestling every week. I don't know much about wrestling, but Jeremy, he works with the wrestling team. He intimately details of what that sport is all about. And he takes us inside Cowboys wrestling like nobody else can. And we're talking about that every week. So I think that was a good showing. I'll ask him later today whether or not that met expectations. But good for the Cowboys for a good showing at the National Duels Invitational. Up at the top of the list, we've got education. Education is often at the top of the list. But there are this Tulsa World story is interesting. Deputy raped female inmate, then handed her a stack of napkins. This isn't just the Tulsa World. This is a Lee Enterprises investigations team that is doing this story. And I've only noticed them in the past few weeks, but they do some really hard-hitting stories. Worth a read, especially if you're a Tulsa World subscriber. We've got some things from News 9, Tulsa World, Oklahoma Voice. You may have heard last week that there is a panel that met and said that a lot of salaries, such as for state superintendent and various elected offices, were too low. I tend to probably agree with that. You want people. I think it's actually a good idea for elected officials to make more so that they're not using these roles as a financial step up to bigger salaries and bigger paydays in the future. You want to attract people, good people, to these roles. However, it turns out that an ineligible member may have voted, and so those panels are going to have to meet again. So we won't know, especially now that there's been some public reaction as to whether those pay hikes will stick. SNAP benefits are being distributed to Oklahomans. We know that now that the federal government has reopened. There is if you haven't heard about this is kind of fascinating. Gentner Drummond and Governor Kevin Stitt. Gentner Drummond is the Attorney General. He's running for governor next year. Governor Stitt is term limited, but they are at loggerheads. Is that would be the right word? Over rules for hunters and particularly Native American hunters. Drummond warns wildlife officials not to charge indigenous hunters on reservations without license. So these hunters don't have a license. They don't need it. They're on reservations. I think that's what the argument is about. KOSU has the story. They have an Indigenous Affairs reporter. It's fantastic. I will tell you, I put my money where my mouth is. Let's just put this for a second. I put my money where my mouth is when it comes to this. I donate every month to KOSU and to KGOU. I think it's important. I don't donate a lot. I'm not rich. I mean, look at my setting here. There's no fancy furniture. I've got a home store candle burning in the background. Is what it is. It's the life of journalism. But I still pull out $7.50 for KOSU, $7.50 every month for KGOU. Imagine if we all did that. The content that they provide is, as the French would say, incredible. I'll go through this a little bit more. Promenade Mall is expected to change hands soon. Here's what we know. Tulsa Flyer, it's one of those new publications in the state. Tulsa Flyer is comprised of Oklahoma Eagle and the Tulsa Flyer. There's a Tulsa Flyer newsroom, but you also have the Oklahoma Eagle. You also have La Semana. And I said that like a total gringo. La Semana. I minored in Spanish. I should be able to get that right. La Semana. And there are other publications. So Tulsa Flyer has a prominent role here. The largest subscription in the state, though, belongs to this one down here, Cherokee Phoenix. Did you know more people subscribe to the Cherokee Phoenix than they do any other publication in this news publication in the state? And they're reporting on Chief Hoskin and his emergency food measures. They did a great job during the federal government shutdown. So anyway, we got some breaking news in here, a couple of crashes that killed folks over the weekend, a murder-suicide in Sand Springs, sad stories. I try not to focus on those because if I'm being honest, those there isn't as much public import in those stories. That's not impacting your pocketbook, your family, your neighborhood. It can, and they're sad stories, but it's also, I leave that to TV news, right? So that's what's in the Oklahoma memo today. I work from home. I keep my eye on the breaking news alerts so you don't have to. I post to TikTok. I post here to YouTube. If something breaks throughout the day, I'll post a little vertical video. And I sure would appreciate you, though, subscribing to that newsletter at oklahomamemo.com/subscribe and comment here if you watch this and got any value. I also take input from what you're interested in. I don't do a lot of individual independent investigative journalism. Once I start getting funding in here, I'm going to start a Patreon and things like that. Once some money starts rolling in for this, then will do that to the extent that I can, but mostly I'm amplifying others' content. So if there's something that you're interested in here in Oklahoma, let me see if I can connect you to information from a vetted newsroom about that. Again, my name is Ryan, Oklahoma Memo. I am so grateful. This is so random to be doing this, but I think I'm going to do this every day for a while. It's a live video. There's no harm in it. And if you enjoyed it, let me know. Put it in the comments. Until tomorrow, have a fantastic Monday.